Good morning, folks. Hope we're all well. You're all very welcome to this morning's webinar, our last webinar before Christmas. Before Christmas arrives, the Christmas cheer is starting to arrive. Hope we all have our Christmas trees up. You might just pop a good morning into the chat function there, just so I know you can all hear me okay. Let us know what your favorite Christmas movie is as well. People are still arriving there. Pop a good morning into the chat. Let us know what your favorite Christmas movie is. Okay, thank you very much. So look, we've had huge interest in huge interest in this morning's webinar. We had over 100 clients that have registered to attend this morning's webinar, which is great. We really appreciate you taking the time out. This is a client-only webinar, and we're going to focus on two main areas. The first is the area of how we action plan from the survey, the Great Place to Work survey. So we'll share some insights around how you move from that data into an action plan. Not the easiest thing to do in the world, so we're looking forward to sharing some insights on that. And also around, in terms of how you attract talent, external talent, how do you activate the achievement? So in terms of that's sort of an employer branding piece. So how do you kind of activate that achievement internally and externally in order to attract talent? So we've two great companies on the call this morning. Please feel free to pop your questions into the chat function or the Q&A function, and we'll look to answer all the questions as we go. Now, before I introduce our first speaker this morning, we will just have a quick poll. Okay, and hopefully that's up on everyone's screen now. So the first question that we're asking in our interactive poll, which sounds really exciting, is have you developed an action plan based on your survey results? Have you developed an action plan based on your survey results? And the options are yes, no, working on it, our survey isn't closed yet. So yes, no, working on it, or our survey isn't closed yet. So we'll leave that up there for a few minutes, just to let people answer. Have you developed an action plan based on your survey results? Yes, no, working on it, or our survey isn't closed yet. And the results are in, and we have, okay, 2% have said yes, 21% have said no, 45% are working on it. Okay, so lots of people will, it's a good time for them to be on this call, and 31% have said our survey isn't closed yet. So even though your survey isn't closed yet, there will be some useful insights from today's session. Okay, so delighted to introduce our first speaker, Michelle Ryan from Meaghers Pharmacy. Michelle has over 20 years experience in HR, sits on the leadership team, leads up the people strategy, and this is an organization that has achieved lots of recognition over the last number of years, in recent times as well, in terms of retail excellence also, and I think a Deloitte Best Managed, if I'm right, Michelle. Yeah. So Michelle, listen, and what we're going to do is we're going to pop up a visual in the background, Michelle, just as we're working through this conversation. So Michelle, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for inviting me. Good morning, everybody. So what Cathal has just popped up there is just an infographic.
Thanks, Michelle. Michelle, what's your favorite Christmas movie?
So my one's a bit dark. I love Scrooged, the 1980s version with Bill Murray. So I have a tradition of watching that every single Christmas Eve. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite.
That's fantastic. Very dark, Michelle. Thanks for sharing. So Michelle, I suppose, look, just for everyone on the call, you might just share a bit in terms of Meaghers Pharmacy, who you are, locations, and some detail around your own role as well, Michelle.
Yes, certainly. So good morning all. My name is Michelle Ryan. I have been with Meaghers Pharmacy as their Human Resources Manager for the past 4 years. Meaghers Pharmacy is an owner-managed community pharmacy group across Dublin. We have 9 stores across Dublin, and we also have a very busy e-commerce store which has grown particularly over the last few years, which is based out of Dublin 24. So as I said, it's an owner-managed business, and our managing director is Una O'Hagan, who is a pharmacist herself.
That's great, Michelle. Thanks for sharing that, and just we'll look to pop the visual back up on the screen now. So great place to work program, and I noticed there from results of the poll, we have number of organizations still to develop an action plan, right? Or currently in the middle of the survey process, if you like. So maybe a good place to start, Michelle, is so do the survey, results are in, right? Could you give us a sense as to how you move from the survey results into developing an action plan for the business, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose year on year, we learn a little bit more about this, what works well and what doesn't land well in terms of action planning. I suppose I'm a big believer of including as many people as we can in the Great Place to Work process. So our first port of call when we get the survey results back is we assemble the senior team together, who collectively we look at all these results. So our financial controller is there, our head of purchasing and retail, our superintendent pharmacist. So all representatives from our senior team are there and are present. So from the get-go, what has really worked best for us is the full senior team owning this process and it not being a HR process. So for the last 3 years, somebody from the Great Place to Work would obviously come in, meet with us and take us through nearly line by line the results, and also the comments and the suggestions from our team. So that's the first port of call. What's worked really well for me with Great Place to Work is using that information to inform our people strategy. So I don't believe there should be kind of 2 concurrent strategies, a Great Place to Work action plan and a people strategy. They both speak to each other. So really, I feel that the action planning really gives us the answers to the test in terms of the people piece. So what I do is I take that and I cascade it into a message for our wider team. We share, all the good and the bad and the ugly with our teams, what's being said and what the suggestions are. We're very, very candid with that. But I also take the highlights and I implement it into our people plan. So that's how we commence action planning. We go at this in a very honest way, that we share the information, we allow people to input into the information. And from year one, we have made it about a process for the full business and not something just for HR to execute. That's
really interesting, Michelle. So people plan is not a separate thing from your Great Place to Work or your survey action plan. They're one of the same thing.
Absolutely. Like we got great engagement from the start with our employees in this survey, and our culture is quite open and there's a lot of candor. So people engaged in the survey, they gave us their feedback, they gave us their suggestions, and really we grabbed a hold of them. Like as I said, they gave us the answers to the test and what we need to do. What's really important though is how we communicate that action plan and keep people connected to the plan. And when we achieve something, we tell people. When we're mid-process, we update people, but we keep the kind of message alive. It's not something that we do once a year. We do a plan and we put it in the shelf. We speak about the Great Places to Work throughout our year, and it informs our actions, and we do a lot of internal marketing back to our employees on what our successes have been, so that when they know in year 2 or year 3 they open up that survey, they know it's not a tick box exercise. We are using it, it is part of our culture, and they do know that their input will be heard and considered.
Brilliant, Michelle. And I know you mentioned they're keeping it alive during the year, right? Which is, of course, is what is what's needed. How do you do that? What ways do you communicate to keep the plan alive? How does that work?
Yeah, and it's quite challenging to do that when you're operating in COVID and everybody is working remote. I suppose one of the things is we're very, very good as a business in branding, and in particular, like we have an excellent marketing team externally. We also market ourselves very well internally as well. We keep the Great Places to Work, even message, logo alive when we interact with each other. To give you kind of an actual example, most recently we've implemented a new staff success platform for our business that we've automated. Engagement check-ins, performance reviews, probation reviews. And in delivering that out and delivering that training out to our people managers, the first couple of slides on that training referred back to the Great Places to Work. Okay, so it's back to, you spoke, we listened. These were the 3 areas that were noted as a development area for the business, and as a result, we are implementing this platform. So it's just, when we do something, we tie it back to the Great Places to Work logo, brand, message, and feedback all the time. And I find that's really helpful.
Very good, Michelle. So in many ways, you're kind of picking those moments when people are together or when there's an interaction, and you're kind of creating space to keep the action plan alive, to keep people informed, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great, Michelle. And you said something at the very start, which has intrigued me, right? Which is it's the role of all of the senior team, right? The responsibility in terms of Great Place to Work. Now, I agree with you, right? And then that's also a difficult thing to achieve. There'll be many organizations on the call here that be saying, oh my God, I'd love if all my senior team were bought into to the people agenda, the Great Place to Work program. Any specific things that you do, Michelle, to kind of get that ownership across the team?
Yeah, well, like, I believe the culture kind of starts from the top, and we have a managing director that's, socialized this idea with me when I was applying for the job in Meaghers, that this was one of the areas that she wanted to get achievement in. So, like, from our top, we've got that buy-in. I suppose I'm very fortunate to work within a management team that do have that care for their employees and for the team, and we do have a huge amount of camaraderie. So, to be honest with you, Cathal, I'm starting on a good footing with this. But I suppose it's including the message all the time, and for different people will have different takeaways from the Great Places to Work, and different interests in it. From a financial perspective, right, it makes perfect sense to have an engaged team, to have a team that's recognized as Great Places to Work, and to attract the best talent. What that equates to is a high performing organization and a successful business. So that would sell it to somebody who is maybe more interested in maybe retail or finance. There is a method in our madness with this at times. So it's really just tapping into kind of people's actual interests in the system itself. But I am coming from a fortunate place that, people get it. And for those who have joined the senior management team in recent years, we would speak about this, quite early on, even in the selection, that this is something that is important to the business. So yeah, I hope that somewhat answers it.
Great, Michelle. So even in the selection process, as somebody coming in at any level within the business, they're hearing about what's important to Meaghers Pharmacies. It's not something that they find out about a year into it or 6 months into it. They're hearing the selection process.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we really, really go to town on the branding of Great Places to Work. We advertise it over our LinkedIn channels. Our managing director has referred to it, lots of times over our social media channels, which have probably 100,000 followers between a couple of channels. It's not like it's I don't find it rocket science. We could probably do it a little bit slicker, but certainly, in all our job advertisements, when we speak to candidates, we talk about Great Places to Work. But funnily enough, I'm recruiting for a support position at the moment, and I'd say if I spoke to 10 people, 9 people actually brought it up themselves in the selection, that they know that we are accredited. And I suppose that gives them some comfort that the organization is operating at a certain level. So we really go to town with this, and I think it really differentiates ourselves between some of our competitors in terms of attracting that talent. And it's been so important in the last 3 years, because certainly retail pharmacy has been really, really challenged, particularly with practices like locums and whatnot. We've been really challenged to attract and retain, but Great Places to Work has been a huge part in our success around that.
Brilliant, Michelle. And thinking about the action plan, right? So and you can see the infographic here, right? So for everyone on the bottom left, we have kind of our overall trust levels within Meaghers Pharmacy in 2020, right? 72%. And then we follow that journey map all the way along, and it's at 78% in 2022. So really good, strong levels of trust. Is there a link between the fact that you action plan from the data, Michelle, and your trust levels that you've achieved?
Oh, like 100%, Cathal. Like some of the ideas or the projects have directly come from the survey and the action plan. So, for example, the type of business we work in is obviously a community pharmacy, and we are all about preventative care and health and well-being. And I suppose some of the feedback we got was to make sure that the service that we're given to our communities is also kind of shown inwards to our employees. So you'll see from that infographic, we acted on a lot of that, and some of our action planning was around establishing flexible rotas, having a group wellness expert and investing more in that person, and mental health first aid training, which has been very impactful for our business. If you move through community first subject matter experts and a welcoming program, again, we have an onboarding program which has been improved over time. We have a subject matter expert executing that program in store. So somebody who has dispensary and retail experience is carrying out that program rather than someone from human resources carrying it out. So as we navigate kind of through the 3 years we've been with Great Places to Work, certainly the information we've gotten, we have cascaded it into a strategy, into an action plan, acted on it, sold back the story, and we've seen improvements in our trust levels.
Brilliant, Michelle. And I think you really broke down the sort of the anatomy of the action plan there with kind of how you went through that. Just looking at one of the statements here on the infographic, if that's all right. So people here quickly adapt to changes needed for our organization's success. So that's a question on the survey, right? 85% was our number. Putting it into context, right? So our pharmacy was open during open to the community, of course, on the front line, if you like, during COVID, right? Where many of us were able to shelter. That wasn't the case for your people. Also, we've gone through a digital transformation, right? At a similar time. And up the top right, we can see we're growing our team numbers, right? So there's a lot of change going on, if you like. What's the connection between the trust levels that you've built as a culture, right, from the action plans, with trying to manage all that change that you've done?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll try and answer. I suppose as a business, because we are owner managed by Una, we're quite an agile organization, and the culture Una has is that she wants feedback, certainly, and then the senior team are always open to hearing feedback. So I suppose the Great Places to Work program itself has allowed that to become quite structured, and allows us to action plan that feedback. So for example, I think a good example of this was right at the start of COVID. Great Place to Work were really fast out of the traps in organising a pulse survey for us. I think this was within weeks of COVID hitting, and looking back, that was absolutely crucial for our business, and it was an excellent kind of service to get, because that allowed us to go in and temperature check what we needed to be doing during that critical time. So to your point, Cathal, we were essential workers. Our pharmacies remained open. When the GPs closed, people came down very anxious to our pharmacists and our pharmacy teams for support. When we ran this survey, we got a lot of feedback in terms of what we could be doing for our communities, and we acted on much of it. So over the time of COVID, when people were just getting the basics done, our business was really pushing boundaries on things like online pharmacy, online GP, a delivery service to our most vulnerable customers, also kind of trying to cascade as much of our retail, which couldn't be done in stores, onto our e-commerce platform. A lot of that input came from Great Places to Work. So for example, somebody was very happy with our our health and safety and our support in a particular store, but gave us the feedback of, can we do more for our community? Can we, instead of asking somebody who's vulnerable to come into our pharmacy, can we get that to them? So I suppose then when it comes back to be, resurveyed, we have again sold the message out of, this has been all our successes. Other businesses kind of went to ground, but we just pushed through, and it made us a stronger business. And because it opened up all these different channels that we could serve our community, we sold that message back to our teams. They took pride, because we have a very proud workforce. They work for each other and they work for the community. And I suppose what that does is they can see the business not only just operated and survived during COVID, it thrived and it did more, and it contributed to its communities during a very challenging time for a lot of people. And then obviously the survey, the trust levels improve with that. So I hope that somewhat answers.
Michelle, because sometimes the tendency through change, or when you're in the middle of change, is actually to pull back a bit from listening to kind of, there's maybe a nervousness about what you might hear back, but the fact that you kept the listening strategy up, you kept listening to people, asking for their ideas and their thoughts, and you've generated that sense of ownership from people. A question that's come in, Michelle, is given that we're multi-location, right, and many of the companies on the call are multi-location, does each location have their own action plan in terms of the survey results? Is it an overall, or how does it work locally?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that I think should be maybe explored in the future, because we do have 9 or 10 different cultures within a culture, and some of our stores are very dispensary focused, and some of them are in higher footfall for retail, so they probably should. But at this point in time, what we are doing, particularly during COVID, is we're just really hitting the basics with one action plan across the full business and e-commerce business.
Okay, very good.
But it's definitely, it's something that, with the benefit of time, we should be doing in future, I think.
Fantastic, Michelle. And the idea of retaining and attracting best talent, right, which is the hot topic, and it's yes, it's always going to be. I know we have the Great Resignation is the latest buzzword. We love it.
Yeah. Or the quiet resignation is the new one.
Yeah, the quiet resignation. I think we should always have a great resignation mindset. Our people, how do we build our culture to retain and get the best people always? But could you give us a sense as to kind of how the program has supported that retention of people, and then that attraction of new people into the business?
Yeah, so in terms of retaining, we've had huge retention challenges like any other business, and we're starting on the basis of having a highly engaged, highly professional workforce. So I can only imagine what other organisations are going through as well. So it has been challenging, to be completely honest. I suppose alongside the Great Places to Work, we also run engagement surveys, which I think kind of help the bigger process. So we do check-ins a couple of times a year with our employees, ask just very simple questions around engagement and enablement. So I feel that if there is a sense of somebody, kind of being uneasy or wanting to move, we can kind of swoop in and try and deal with that in the early stages. So I suppose when you're speaking about, forward planning, action planning, when you're delivering on feedback, and you're being candid with people, I suppose it joins them up with the kind of the mission, the vision, and the values of the business and the culture of the business. And I'm a firm believer that, people have to be connected with the story of the business and what it's looking to achieve. And we do that, and we do that very well. Now, if we hadn't had COVID, I think we'd be doing it even better, but we're doing it really, really well. So I feel that keeping the message alive and keeping the connection to the story will ultimately help our engagement levels. The second part of your question, just in terms of the attraction, well, I think up until this year, Cathal, we were the only pharmacy group that were recognised. I stand to be corrected on that. So like that's a real kind of a badge for us in terms of selling. We're really, as I said, we're really good marketeers. Our brand appears, our brand is really strong. We appear a much bigger business than we actually are, and we sell that really well during our selection. And we also use Great Places to Work for other programs. So you mentioned at the start of the call, we have been recognised as Retail Excellence Ireland's best workplace in Ireland for 2022. That's an absolutely huge award to get. And what we do now with that is we tell anybody with ears that we are the best place to work. We are accredited with Great Places to Work. Retail Excellence Ireland has recognised that as well. And we hope that that gives us the edge to attract people into our business, because it's a hustle. Let's be honest. You're against other organisations that may be able to offer more because they're a lot bigger. They're multinational. We're not. We're within Dublin, so we do have restrictions. So what we sell to people is the experience, the culture, the great places to work, being able to be involved in the running of the business to a certain extent. And I suppose that's where I believe we have our edge.
Yeah, and and it is a hustle, Michelle, right? And like, first of all, it's got to be authentic, right? So if we're telling the external world that we're a great place to work, then it must be connected with what the reality is, what the lived reality is internally in terms of our culture, right? Which you're doing in Meaghers Pharmacy. Also, what I heard there was like the importance of marketing and selling yourself internally and externally. I don't know if it's an Irish thing. Sometimes we're a little bit shy about selling ourselves or promoting ourselves, but that's actually a really important part of this. Internally, selling the culture to people, and also externally, it is great as well. We have a couple more questions in, Michelle, but what I'll do is, if we have time at the end, I might put them over to you. But Michelle, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on the journey that you've been on.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Michelle. So I think we're going to pop up a quick poll before I introduce our next speakers. So do you use your Great Place to Work recognitions in your talent attraction strategy? So do you use your Great Place to Work recognitions in your talent attraction strategy? It's yes or no. And given that I think we have a number of organizations, it's their first year, they're still surveying. I guess that is something that they will plan, right? So do you use your great place to work recognitions in your talent attraction strategy? And the options are yes and no. We'll leave that up there for a second while William and Hollie are prepping their favorite Christmas movie. So we've heard Scrooge already. And the question, do you use your great place to work recognitions in your talent attraction strategy? Okay, 75% of people are using it, and 25% are not using it. So 75% are using it and 25% are not using it. That's great. So thank you very much for taking part in that. Next up, we have Net Affinity. We have a double act, William and Hollie. William is founder and CEO, has a keen interest in all things travel tech. Net Affinity have developed a client-centric SaaS product solution. And William is paying close attention to future trends in terms of how SaaS technology will I suppose, continue to influence, disrupt, and future build in terms of the hotel market. And Hollie is marketing director. Hollie oversees the marketing team, provide a best-in-class service for their hotel clients, and also leads up the ongoing marketing strategy internally, externally. Recently worked on the Net Affinity rebrand as well, Hollie. So that's great to see. And I will pass it over to Net Affinity. And William and Hollie, do not forget to share your favorite Christmas movie also with all of us. So thanks for joining us.
Let me just share my screen. Can you see that okay, Carl?
We can see that perfectly.
Very good. So yeah, to answer your first question in terms of favorite movie, Christmas movie, it has to be Elf. I'm a big Will Ferrell fan, so yeah, anything that he does, I like a lot. So yeah, it's yeah, I would say my favorite. So yeah, thanks a million for the introduction, and thanks very much for the invitation to come along and present to everybody this morning, and just I suppose to share our own learnings from the journey in terms of working with great places to work. And I suppose if I introduce myself firstly, so I'm managing director of Net Affinity, and joining me on the call, as Colin was saying, is Hollie, our marketing director. So between the two of us, we're going to do a presentation. So I'll talk about Net Affinity and I suppose our journey with Great Places to Work. And then Hollie will just take us through in terms of how we activated or executed I suppose externalized our work with Great Places to Work. And just to explain with everybody, just to explain who we are, we're an Indigenous Irish software business, or we sell like an e-commerce booking platform to hotels in Ireland and the UK. So we have a staff of 50. We've been in business for about 21 years. And if I chat kind of briefly about our culture, I think we've always had a very strong culture within the business and a strong culture of trust and respect. And as I say, like I think it's always been there really from day one. Just embedded in the DNA of our business. And I suppose one of the reasons why Great Places to Work was very attractive to us when we started engaging with them. We just felt that the underlying principles of what Great Places to Work, what it stands for, tied in very nicely with who we are, and particularly on the culture side of things. And I suppose as part of the process, and certainly as part of COVID, and I would say particularly more so over the last 2 or 3 years, we definitely have moved employee well-being to the center of our business. And it's really, to build that commitment or that environment, that promotes employee health and well-being. And I'll touch on that more in a sec. But just to explain as well to everybody, we are now a remote first company, and what that means is, and I suppose if we go back to, let's say, the time pre-COVID, we were very much, an office-centric business. We had an office in Dublin. We were everybody. All of our staff were pretty much in Dublin, or within an hour or so of Dublin, and we're traveling into the office every morning. And then with the advent of COVID, it forces all of us to work remote. And over the 2 years or so, everybody got so used to the idea and comfortable with the idea that we made the decision that we would become. And I suppose over the course of the 2 years, we moved to being a remote first company, and it's playing nicely into who we are as a business, and particularly on the culture side of things. And so, why Great Places to Work? And I suppose if we go back to that point in terms of, we always felt that we had a strong culture, and a culture that was based on intrinsic rather than extrinsic values. But we kind of used it as I suppose, a tool for us to attract and retain staff. We're certainly of the view that if we had, if the culture was strong within the business, and and I suppose certainly being in the tech sector, you're competing with, big players, the likes of Google and Facebook and so forth. So you certainly can't compete with them in terms of salary and benefits, but you can compete on the softer side of things in terms of the work environment and the culture. So that was something that I suppose was a conscious decision that we made over the years. But it certainly has paid dividend in terms of staff retention, and we're certainly of the view that if your staff are happy, well, then it feeds out into your clients. That the clients get a sense of who the business is, and they get a sense that the staff that are working here, that they are happy and like working and enjoy their job, and that feeds out to the work and the service then that we provide to our clients. And we have been tracking it before we engage with Great Places to Work. We were measuring our staff happiness, and it's what we call like some of you may be familiar with the Net Promoter Score. So there's like an employee version of that. So we started this about 3.5 years ago, and every quarter, I don't think we did it every quarter, we did it about maybe 3 times a year, we would send out a survey. It'd be just like a 10 questionnaire thing to say, look, how are you feeling right now? And as we always ask that critical question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Net Affinity as a great place to work? So we always got a sense of where we were sitting in terms of the staff happiness, and a measure that we try to say, each quarter we get a score on that, and we average that out over a 12-month period or over a 3-year period. So we had a fair idea in terms of where we were sitting, but we certainly wanted an external perspective on it, and that's why we engaged with Great Places to Work last year. So the first time that we participated, we certainly felt that was really, really important just to educate all of the staff in terms of why we were doing it and why we believed that was really important for us. And as part of that, I suppose, session that we did with staff was just to explain the certification process, but most importantly, just to reassure staff that the survey, because it's a very detailed survey and we're collecting a lot of data back from staff, but it's really important to re-emphasize that point, that all the data and who completed the survey, all of that data is anonymous. It can't be linked back to any employee. But once the survey was completed and we got the results back from the Great Places to Work team, and then we got all our hands together and shared the findings. We went through everything in detail with everybody, you know, warts and all. So all the you know, the positive feedback as well as the negative feedback, and you know, sometimes a little bit hard to stomach, but you have to go through it and share it with everybody, you know. But the key point from it was that, you know, we highlighted 3 areas, you know, that we said, okay, look, you know, for the next 12 months, we're going to work on these 3 areas. And as part of that, and again, based on the guidance from Cotter and the team, that you know, we set up like an internal Great Places to Work working group. This was headed up by Janice, our finance director, our finance and HR director. And this was a cross-functional team made up of non-managers, and we felt that that was important. And I suppose just going back to what Michelle was saying on the Meaghers side of things, you know, we've always had quite a strong buy-in at a senior management level, but what we really wanted to do was to get buy-in at a non-management level. And so we consciously made that decision to ensure that we had a representation of non-managers on that cross-functional team, and so that we had everybody from each of the different departments within the company. And again, taking the 3 weakest areas and say, okay, how do we make these better over the next 12 months? Because we can't do everything. Let's say you can't tackle all that was coming out of the survey. So we just said, okay, look, the top 3 areas, let's concentrate on these. And one of the key outputs from it was our employee life cycle model, which I'll touch on the next slide. The other area that we looked at was around our benefits side of things. Again, this is something that's under our control, but we took a good look at those late last year and said, okay, how do we make these better? How do we make them more unique to us? You know, and even I suppose the type of things that we would have done there was, you know, we've always been good at celebrating, I don't know, let's say work anniversary days, birthday days. You know, we do things like, say, you know, we would send out like a hamper to staff on their work anniversary, and again, a hamper again on their birthday. But on their birthday days, they get a day off. They also get a day off for their work anniversary day. And then we introduce things like, say, wellness day for everybody. So again, that's just an extra day's leave for all employees. And then another thing that we introduced was a volunteering day. So again, if an employee felt strongly about a particular cause, whatever, they wanted to say, look, I'd like to help out. I don't know, say maybe Meals on Wheels, for example. You know, they could take a day off, paid leave, and volunteer at the charity of their choice. There was things like that we did. And I suppose the last point there, in terms of even some of the simpler initiatives, you know, so we use Slack, which is like a live chat function, which we use internally, you know, to communicate with each other and with different teams. But we have a thing called Share the Love, which is a very simple thing, you know, where somebody says, you know, just I want to shout out to everybody, you know, say thanks to John, who did a super job today and getting a client live with a new website. So, you know, that type of thing. And everybody says, yeah, hey, well done, John, you know. So again, it's just a nice bit of peer recognition, but a very simple but very effective. Yeah, just to touch on the employee life cycle, I'm not going to go through all of the details, but I suppose the key point that I'd like to communicate was that, you know, we were already doing some of these bits already, and what came out of the work from the Great Places to Work team was that, you know, we put a structure on all of this in the first instance, and secondly, you know, within that structure, we looked at key areas, particularly on the recruitment and the offboarding side of things, you know, making sure that we're getting that recruitment right from the very outset, you know, and I think we always have been good at it, but I suppose we're just getting a little bit stricter, making sure we're getting the right fit, not just in terms of personality and culture, but also in terms of the skill set that we needed, and saying, okay, are we sure we have the right person based on the skill set that we need for that particular role? So that's where we put a lot of attention on trying to get that right. And once we have the right person coming in, well, then we go through the whole sort of onboarding, training and development, and then the performance management. And the performance management is quite good. You know, we do like we would have our annual reviews, but also we would have quarterly catch-ups. So we try to catch things. You know, if there's any issues there, we catch those things. You know, before they fester and develop. And also the same on the offboarding side of things. And again, it's very important that that people leave on a positive note. So, you know, we try our best to make sure that offboarding process is as positive in a way as much as we possibly can. And again, you know, if somebody leaves with a positive experience, you know, they will have fond memories at Net Affinity, and please God, they might refer somebody to work with Net Affinity in the future. So we've completed our second survey, and our overall score has improved. And as to be expected, as Cathal did highlight this to us, that when we started the journey with them, that you will always have a new set of areas to work on. You'll never get to a point where everything is perfect. You'll have different things will fluctuate just as much as the business fluctuates over the year. And so we now have a new set of priorities which have been set for 2023, and funnily enough, some of those priorities are very closely aligned to our company objectives for 2023. So it's quite tuned in to where the business is at. So the culture and the feedback from people is very, very tuned into where we're at as a business, which was positive. Hollie, I'll hand over to yourself now. Can you unmute, Hollie?
Hollie, unmute.
Hello.
Hey, Holles.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, so Home Alone, I think, is my favorite Christmas movie, although it's closely followed by Elf, I would have to say as well, William. Yeah, close tie. Yeah, so sorry, Cathal did introduce me there at the start. So I'm the marketing director at Affinity. I've been with the company for over 12 years now. So I suppose I've very much seen the culture and, from a brand perspective from the very start. And I remember my first days in the company, and the culture was very strong back then, and we were a much smaller company back then. But I suppose in terms of from an external view, the branding and our brand story is really important. And it's something that this year, we went on a branding journey. It was actually, I think, about this time last year, probably about 12 months ago now. And we very much went down to the foundations of who we were and who we are. And we spoke to our staff, we spoke to partners who we work with, but I suppose most importantly, we spoke to our clients, and we asked them questions. And not us personally, we got an external people to do it, to make sure that the responses were really true, and just to understand who we are. And we learned a lot about ourselves, and we also learned a lot about what our name means, because we even explored, do we need to change our name? Should we still be Net Affinity? And we very much learned about our brand, and our external brand is very much linked to our culture, which obviously is really positive. And as part of the exercise as well, we also looked at our values. And before we did this branding exercise, I think we had a list of 10 lovely values, and whilst they all were good and looked good, and I think we were trying to be too many things, and the exercise really made us kind of look at, well, what are our values? We broke it down by our business value, our personality value, and our emotive value. And the exercise was just excellent. And I think what it's allowed us to do is just to kind of clarify what our values are and what they mean. So whether that's internally with our staff, where we're recruiting, if we're talking to somebody, like, we genuinely hope to think, or if we're working with our clients, they see these values in who we are as the people we work and the way that we work with them. So our business value, integrity; our personality value, tenacious; and our emotive value, with you. And that last one, with you, was probably the strongest of all of them, in that, we in terms of how we work with our clients and our staff and our people, it's very much about kind of being there with them, being a helping hand, always there to kind of support them and guide them. So yeah, the new values was definitely a big journey, kind of a big step for us. And then I suppose as part of that then as well, culture comes very much into that branding exercise, and especially when we're talking about recruiting candidates or going to market, when we have new roles. And sometimes and I think this is something we did, we initially probably thought back in the day that culture was, the pool tables and the pizzas, and that's all our own images there of our pool tables and our pizzas and our beers in the office days. But as William was saying, we're a remote first company now, and you can't do these things in the same way, but yet our culture is even better than it's ever been. So I suppose it was just a big lesson for us. So whilst you want to get the external message out there, so whether it's recruitment perspective or even just for your staff, there are ways of bringing a culture to life. It doesn't have to be, the Google factor, as sometimes we used to call it, about having pizza and beers on a Friday. So yeah, that was definitely something that I suppose it was something we struggled with at the start with COVID, and I know Michelle kind of alluded to it, but I suppose being a tech company, we're all at home in offices, and how do you still bring the culture to life through different ways? So we very much managed to do it, and we're doing a really good job of it. I suppose then in terms of our activation, so more practically, you know, just want to kind of go through what we've done. So as William was saying, this is our second year now, but last year we were new to this. We were certified, and we got the accreditation with Great Place to Work, and we completed our survey, and we started setting up our team. But you know, we said, okay, now we need to activate it. So anybody that's going through the process at the moment, or maybe the process is yet to come, you know, you'll choose your activation date. So we kind of set up our own little checklist really of what we wanted to do and needed to do to make the most out of Great Places to Work and our accreditation. So, you know, simple things like we reviewed our website. So, you know, looking at our About Us page, how can we incorporate the Great Place to Work message within it? You know, our careers page, which is obviously an important piece of it. How do we get that message across in the right way, using logos and images and stuff to tell the story? The recruitment channels as well, and job descriptions and things like that. So obviously as part of that employee life cycle as well, which William covered, we just make sure that, you know, if we're using channels like LinkedIn, Indeed, that we're making sure that Great Place to Work comes to the fore of that. But also as well that when we were going to be doing interviews, that we make sure that we talk about it and that we're very proud of it. So that was definitely an important piece to plan for. And then I suppose in terms of our employees, you know, to be able to tell a story, so whether it's just telling the story to the world or whether it's from a recruitment perspective, you need to tell it with words and images sometimes, you know, so and even video as well is a good way. So, you know, collating them employee quotes and testimonials was a big thing for us. We already had some from stuff, you know, exercises we'd done in the past, but we certainly went through the process of saying, okay, do we have more content that we can create here so that we can have it ready kind of in a bank of content to be able to put out? And then obviously a press release. It's kind of a bit of a obvious one to do when you're activating something, but it allows you to kind of bring the message together and put your quotes and testimonials together into a story, and then approve images. But the images part was probably the bit that we struggled the most with at the time. You know, this was last year, and unfortunately at that time we hadn't all been together completely as a company in a quite a long time because of COVID. So we didn't really have up-to-date images of everybody in our team. So it was something we're like, oh gosh, what we're going to do. So, you know, we found images we could use for sure, but it was a priority for me and for the company to say, right, we have to make this a priority. When we do get together, we have a photographer, we make sure we have new images always ready to hand, because when we were in an office environment, that was never an issue. We constantly had opportunities to get them images and photography. Internal teams was a big part of it, informing them, and William spoke about that, and I know Michelle, you spoke about it as well, but we very much involved every single person in the company, from an intern to managers to heads of departments, to make sure that they understood what this meant to us and to get the excitement as well. We very much, like, I remember the day we announced it and went live with our accreditation for the first time. It was actually a really exciting day for us. You know, it's a big thing to celebrate, and genuinely everybody was on board and sharing that story. And like Will was saying, like, you know, if we have a good story from our own staff, that helps to attract new talent, and for people to understand and where you are. But also as well, a big part of this for us, it's not just about talent, it's about attracting clients. You know, we're in a market, we work with hotels, so it's very much about, you know, if we get in front of prospects and clients, that they understand and they genuinely see them values and our culture in the individuals that we've hired and the people of who we are. And it's a massive part of the recruitment process that we would almost choose a personality and a culture over other skills, because we see that as the most important part, and everything else sometimes will come together. And then just the populating of the Great Place to Work profile. So anybody that has got their accreditation, you'll know that you get your profile, and to populate that in the best light possible, because that's a source of reference, you know, for candidates or just even for the industry. It is kind of your accreditation source of reference. So then I suppose in terms of once we activated the Great Place to Work, so this time last year, it's about then what we did within the year. So some simple things really, and we're still only learning, to be honest. I remember, Cotter, when you asked us to do this, I was like, oh, okay, have we done a good job? You know, because I think we need to realize we have done a good job of activating it. And I think in my head, we've got a lot of more things that I think we can do. But it's always a journey. So, you know, things like embedding and ensuring the Great Place to work logo is used in the right way. So, you can't put it everywhere. You can't constantly use it. You have to use it in the right way and where appropriate. But there are ways that you can use it, which are subtle. And it's certainly something that we bring even into when we're talking to new prospects and clients, explaining and talking about our culture, because sometimes you think that all you need to talk about is what you can sell and what you can provide, but a lot more of it is about your culture and your people, because they're the people servicing you at the end of the day. And then obviously to continue to embed it within the recruitment process. And we've made a big play on the fact that, if we're doing interviews, that we make it part of it, 5 minutes talking about who we are, what our culture means, why it's important, why people love working for us, and that we're a great place to work company. And we definitely include it with as part of that process. And we have found it beneficial. Like, I know any interviews I've done, and Michelle, you said this, like some people have come to us and said, oh, I've noticed you're a great place to work company. And I do believe it helps attracting candidates. It definitely helps when you're in an interview process, or if you're head to head with another company for attracting talent, that it does help them make that decision, that they get a sense that it's actually really nice to work for us. So it does help. And then I suppose for us and for anyone else that's remote, or even people who have an office, or if they're hoteliers, and I know a good few hotels are online today, but getting the opportunity to get everybody together and to celebrate, because it's a big part in the photo opportunity. So it's something that might seem so simple, but it's something for us that was a challenge, as I said. So it's something that we've addressed now, even ourselves, and we've managed to do it. So I suppose I just have a few examples here in terms of how we activated it. So for example, on our website, so, images and content, and a testimonial there from William, our MD, about how important this is for us. And this is really important to people, again, like I was saying, whether it's staff who currently work for us, whether it's any of our, even partners, it's a big part in the story for them to see it on our website and to understand, okay, they're a great place to work company. We understand it's part of their culture. Likewise, then, William, sorry, yeah, in our recruitment process, so we use channels like Indeed and LinkedIn, and making sure that it comes to the fore within that. But also as well, if we're sharing posts or job descriptions and stuff, like you will see there, that's just even only from a few weeks ago, including imagery within recruitment posts, and it just allows to kind of bring it to life that bit more about our great place to work. Also then as well, this is something we've actually always done, to be honest. It's something we've maybe just done it a bit slicker this year, kind of spotlights on our employees. So, whether it's celebrating somebody with being with us for 12 years in a blog post, or, the journey begun at Affinity was actually a spotlight on 3 people who had joined one of our marketing team, and kind of interviewing them basically about what it's like to work here. And whilst it's not directly great place to work content, it's about culture and what it's like to work at Affinity. And, they very much kind of, say, I feel like part of a family here, and, it's about development, and we're all in it together. And then quotes then, so I did mention this in terms of when you're preparing to activate, it is a big thing, but we had kind of a bank of them, but just bringing them kind of content to life. And these are the types of things then we've shared across social, or you can even put on a jobs description if you need to, or if you put it onto your great place to work profile, quotes and testimonials from your staff. So I suppose then in terms of, we've gone through the process ourselves of being accredited. This is our 2nd year, and we're delighted to have got an increase in our score. But, William has said, like, you're never finished, and it's about kind of what's next within it for us. So, there is always a new set of challenges for each audit. Absolutely no company is perfect, and it's about just kind of having a positive and open mindset to what comes back. You're giving people an anonymous way of giving the feedback. So, it's about just looking at what challenges come back and taking them and acting on them. But as well, that it really does, for us, I suppose, reflects the challenges within the business that we knew. So, the challenges we've been facing, say, as any business does, you have a challenge from here to there. Any challenges that we've been facing, it was interesting for us because they were the ones that came back within the survey. So it allowed us then as senior managers to kind of get insight right across the company and right across every level, and then feed it into a business plan for the coming year. And genuinely in our business plan for 2023, we've got them action plans to improve on the areas that came back in the survey and that we received the results of last month. And then I suppose from a competitive perspective, you know, we're in a competitive space. So whether that's for recruiting talent, retaining current talent, and also as well in terms of, you know, attracting new clients in terms of our hotels. So it allows us to always improve as a business. And we really see the Great Place to Work survey as like a pivotal, you know, part of information for us, and something that we really kind of value, and bring it into everything that we do. Thank you.
Hollie, William, thank you very much. I think because, you know, one of the things you said there, like it's not about being perfect. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect workplace. The journey continues, right? But you've really shared some great insights there. We've a few minutes, so I'm going to try and get to as many of the questions as I can, if that's all right. So Janice is currently doing 4 surveys a year, is a bit concerned around kind of fatigue, survey fatigue, and all of that good stuff. Anyone got any thoughts as to, I don't know, how to keep engagement up with doing so many surveys? Anyone got a view on that? Perhaps I'll start with you, Michelle.
Is that internal surveys, like engagement surveys?
Or engagement surveys, yeah.
Yeah, I think if she had any wriggle room to negotiate that down a little bit, like we that would be my suggestion. We had quarterly check-ins, like engagement check-ins, and we've moved them to twice yearly, just from a practical perspective. It was just too much to ask of our managers who ultimately run dispensaries. So my thoughts, and it served us so well. We're still getting the data we need, and so I think probably negotiate down if that was possible.
Thanks, Michelle.
It is a lot. That is a lot to expect, and people will get fatigued with being asked the same question and not having a long enough period to be able to maybe act on it. You're going back and asking them the same question again. Yeah, that's challenging, I'd say.
I think, for what it's worth, I think it makes sense to only survey as well as you can action plan.
Absolutely, let the plan lead the survey as opposed to survey for survey's sake.
Absolutely. Louise is asking Net Affinity, so William and Hollie, so how have you kept the culture and social engagement strong with being remote first? Like, the things you're doing or you're trying there?
Yeah, I think, as Hollie mentioned, you know, like it certainly it changed quite a bit, I guess. But you know, probably the most important thing is that, you know, the DNA of the company has remained constant right throughout. You know, like it never changed. You know, the essence of who Net Affinity are has always been the same. So, you know, I guess people like that bit firstly. You know, and when we moved from an office-based environment, you know, we were very much, you know, you're in a tech space, or you're in I was mentioning, you're competing for talent with the likes of, not necessarily Google, but companies like that as such, you know, and you kind of do these things like your pool tables and so, you know, and your Pizza Fridays and so forth, you know. And then we realized, let's say with the advent of COVID and people working remote, you know, that whilst those things are nice, you know, they don't really, you know, they're extrinsic values rather than intrinsic values, you know. And okay, if I'm in the office, I'll have a beer and pizza with you guys, but really I'd much rather be at home. And if I can finish at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, I'd rather walk my dog type thing, you know. So it really shifted to the quality of life, I think, is probably the biggest thing. And I suppose certainly for us being a, you know, remote first company, we've given people a huge amount of freedom in terms of how they manage their day and their working week. And we talk a lot about trust, and, you know, the Great Places to Work survey is all based on trust, and like that the essence of who we are as a business is all built on trust. You know, the employees trust me to run the business to the best of my ability. I trust my managers and everybody in the company to do their job to the best of their ability. You know, we don't look over their shoulders. We don't, there's no, tightly control everything that they do. You know, we let them to be, you know, just people themselves and be autonomous as much as they possibly can, you know. So I the answer to the question really is just that people they have more freedom to get the work-life balance, probably is the answer. I would think, Hollie.
Yeah, and for me, I suppose what I've noticed is it's every touch point. So it's every meeting. You know, it's about having like respect, and because, you know, you can have meetings where you've got a busy day or a busy week, and it's about all them values coming into every single touch point. You're you know, so I think when you were in an office, them touch points weren't the same, because you'd run over to someone's desk, you'd tap them on the shoulder, they'd be having a coffee and you'd be asking them about something. But them moments are now all online or digital or through all of our channels. So I think it's less so the pizza, the beers, it's every single touch point and how we work with our people. It's how we attend a meeting. It's being respectful. If you're going to be late, you let them know. It's just everything, you know. I think it's made us better. We've got, we always had a good culture. And like I'm saying, I joined the company over 12 years ago, and I've always thought we've had a very, and like we were saying, it's in the DNA. It's come from William down, and Michelle, you said that as well about your, you know, owner, Una. And I think that's an important piece. Like, if it's about displaying it and bringing it down through the company.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. So we're at time. So just in terms of wrapping up, what I would say is a big thank you to Michelle, to William, to Hollie. Really appreciate the time you've put in terms of pre-session and coming on the call today and sharing your insights. It's very much appreciated. We did get a couple of questions in, William, about the offboarding strategy that's there. The idea of keeping an alumni as well, actually, I think is really interesting in terms of people that leave and keeping an alumni. So we might do a bit of follow up on
that one. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we do have. We actually had somebody come back to us as well.
That's great.
An employee. Yeah, so yeah, we do have an alumni.
Great test for the culture is people coming back, but I love the idea of an alumni of people who have left, keeping them engaged, and you know, who knows, they might be ready to come back at some stage. So thank you all for your insights. Thank you to the Great Place to Work team, as always, for the great job that they have done in terms of this webinar, and for everyone for joining us. We wish you all a very happy Christmas. Favorite Christmas movies: we had Scrooge, we had Elf, we had Home Alone. I'm going to say Home Alone as well. Merry Christmas to everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Cathal.
Thank you.